Forward to Red Sox Yankees this weekend. What do you got on that?
Yeah, I actually am looking forward to it. And it's interesting. I was a little surprised that Roman Anthony was in the lineup tonight against Ryan Yarbrough, but that was sort of my leadoff take here was that I do think that you need to have both Anthony and Meyer start at least one of the games of this series each. So, Anthony's in tonight. I'd like to see Meyer start a game here. I think that you need that. And I'll tell you why it makes sense to do it. Because, yes, the Yankees are throwing three lefties at you. I understand that. And to be honest with you, Yarbrough is the guy I wouldn't have started any lefty young prospect against. He has a 14-1 strikeout to walk ratio against lefties this season in 62 at bats. But the other two guys, even though they've been really good pitchers this year, Carlos Rodon and Max Fried, both of them have higher OPSs to lefties than they do to righties, even though they're left-handed pitchers. And I think if you're really serious about these guys making an impact on your season, which is what I think the team was really built around, not in Alex Cora's mind, but I think in baseball ops mind, it's like it's go time for us because these guys are knocking on the door of the majors and they're ready. That's basically what they told us, that these guys are ready to go. It's not supposed to be a 2-year lead-up period of them acclimating to the majors. It's supposed to be, what was it Sam Kennedy said? There's extreme urgency in the organization. Well, a lot of that was based on these kids being ready. So I do think they have to play, and I think it makes sense to put them out there against Rodon. I put Meyer out there against Rodon because they probably want to put Romy Gonzalez and Toro in there. Well, Romy Gonzalez faced Rodon on Sunday. He was 0 for 4 with 2 Ks. So we can give Meyer his shot against Rodon, who, again, slightly higher OPS against lefties than righties. He's murdered both of them, but he's there. And then Fried has a 653 OPS to lefties and a 510 to right. It's much better. And he's surrendered 4 home runs to lefties in 81 at bats and just 2 to righties and 242 at bats. So he's almost like a reverse split. So Anthony should definitely be in against him. So I think you should see the kids this weekend.
Chris, if there's someone behind, quote unquote, holding them back, who do you think is the more likely suspect, Cora or the front office?
Cora.
Why?
Because he wants to win and they're not ready. They're not ready. They're ready for the majors. See, there's a difference between being ready to make your debut in the majors and take your lumps and learn on the job and you've exceeded what you can learn in AAA and being ready to win at the major league level. This is what they never tell us, and this is what Cora understands. There's a step in between. They act like it's 2 steps. Player development in the major success. No, that's not how it works. There's going to be another step there in between where they have to acclimate to the majors. They're going to take their lumps. And while they're doing that, it could potentially cost you games, particularly for a team that got off to a slow start and has a slimmer margin for error than some of the teams they're competing against for a playoff spot. And that's where they put Cora, I think, in a little bit of a no-win situation from the standpoint of they've sold these prospects to the fan base and sold the idea that when they're here, the rebuild is over and it's, good times are here. But on the other hand, you look at that's not true. On the other hand, they want Cora to win at the major league level. So what is he supposed to do? Is he supposed to prioritize these kids and continue selling the narrative the organization is selling or win the games?
So you think this is another example of Cora and the front office not being on the same page and these kids are kind of caught in the middle of it?
I do. I think it's another example of, I would say, the non-uniform personnel and the uniform personnel having the same goal, but not being on the same page about how to accomplish that goal.
I mean, I think that's the story of the whole franchise. I think they're like this on just about everything now. I find this part to be, Chris, really I think it's the number one problem in the organization. They're not on the same page. Cora's not buying into what they do. And in fact, more often than not, he's rebelling against what they do. But you tell me, is there a bigger problem in the organization than the fact that the manager isn't buying in? And by the way, he might be right. So when I say, depending on which side of the, which school you want to endorse, I'm more of a traditional baseball person. So, but I think the biggest issue is that gap between, because Cora's the link. If Cora doesn't buy in, the clubhouse gets corrupted. So you tell me, is there a bigger problem in the organization than that?
No, I mean, I do think maybe miscommunication or not being able to see things through the same lens probably is the biggest problem they have right now. But again, when I look at it from Cora's standpoint, and look, you can criticize Cora. There's been moves he's made this year that I think have hurt them, and games he could have won that he didn't. And I'll criticize him tonight. I'll be honest. We'll see what happens. Maybe Anthony will go 3 for 4 with the home run, and I'll look like an idiot. But I mean, if you're going to have Anthony start one of these games after you made such a big deal about talking about how you just want to win and that you have righties who are effective against lefties, I can't understand for the life of me why he's out there against Yarbrough, who of the 3 Yankee lefties is the guy who's the toughest on lefties. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But I also think he is sort of been put in an impossible, or at least very difficult position, which is they want him to treat these kids like the crown jewels that the organization considers that they are. But he, as someone who, played the game, has managed for a while, was on 2 World Series winners, one in Houston as a bench coach, one obviously here, understands what it takes to have success throughout the course of a season at the major league level, and knows that they're not automatically ready for that. And he wants to win now.
Chris,
so it's a tough one. And the organization is selling to the fans that they're going to win now, that contention is now.
Chris, could it be that Cora is playing Anthony to make a point? And by that, I'm saying maybe he knows Anthony will struggle against Yarbrough, and that when he goes 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts, he can then look at everybody and go, oh, you guys wanted him to play, so I put him in there. There you go.
Oh, that's Machiavellian, and I kind of love it. I mean, I hope that's not what he's doing, because that would speak to what you said, Maz, which is that you didn't use these words, but you're saying there's not a bigger problem in the organization. That would speak to dysfunction. That would speak to internal strife. That would speak to, I'm trying to prove somebody else wrong more than I'm trying to beat the opponent.
I'm telling
that's
you,
really bad.
He's got some of that in him.
He's done it in the past. But along these lines, Chris, Maz also with, I thought, a really good take earlier in the week, that scene with Roman Anthony with the drilling on the ground balls in the outfield in front of the cameras there. Maz supposes that Cora did that on purpose to show up the organization, or just to show everybody that, look at what they're sending me. They're sending me kids that don't know how to play, and that was intentional. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it definitely was needed, and there could be something to that. And this goes back to what we talked about in terms of the disconnect. And I don't know who's to blame for this one, but when Anthony came up and he played that first game and he had that mistake in right field, and I know Maz knows this, that was the first time he had played right field since May the 2nd. They had been prepping him down in Worcester, mostly in left field and a little bit in center. And we know right field at Fenway, that's one of the toughest right fields to play in Major League Baseball. I know Willie Abreu was out. I get it. But the original lineup that didn't have Anthony in it had Rafaela in right. So why couldn't they have shifted Duran to center, just put Anthony in left? And look, the Wall's no easy thing either, but I do think they have the mini Wall down there in Fort Myers. At least he's seen it before. I don't think there's anything like right field in Fenway that he's seen in the minors that I'm aware of. So who was responsible for that? I mean, did that come from above? He was going to play right field. Was that Cora not being aware of what he's done in Worcester? But I didn't think that was exactly the best management of the team. Again, a position he hasn't played, and I know he's played all the outfield positions, but he hasn't been out there since May the 2nd, and that's where you put him in his major league debut? What are we doing?
It's a good question.
Well, is that along the lines of what you were saying?
Yeah. Look, and if you were, again, if you're asking my opinion, that sounds like an analytics thing. So they want him. They so desperately want Anthony to be a center fielder or a right fielder. They want to be able to use him in a big part of the ballpark and say, see what value we have in this player. We drafted him, and he can play in the middle of the diamond or the equivalent of the middle of the diamond in right field. Left field at Fenway is for hacks.
Yeah.
It is, Chris. Chris, I'm sorry.
No,
it is, Chris.
If Manny Ramirez.
The one of the most overrated things in baseball is, he's got to learn how to play the Wall. It's not that tough. It goes over your head, you turn around, and you play the bounce. That's it. It's a piece of cake. And every hack that has ever played outfield for the Red Sox over the years, they stick him in left field. You want to know why? Because it's the size of a shoebox, and anything that is over your head, you run towards the infield and turn around. That's it. It's a piece of cake. I could play left field at Fenway Park, and that's not an exaggeration. I guarantee you I could play left field at Fenway Park.